We all know heroes in our world, but some of the most impactful and important heroes aren't recognized and are forgotten. The Harlem Hellfighters are an African American unit fighting in World War I. They are true heroes, but were largely ignored in history. The 369th, also known as the Harlem Hellfighters, were established and fought in World War I. They fought hard for their country, but they also fought for African Americans. The Harlem Hellfighters are an important and impactful group in history. They faced many conflicts with racism while fighting in World War I, but they fought through that with their heroism and bravery. They brought jazz music to France and paved the way for more African Americans to obtain rights, prove themselves as soldiers, and be free. African Americans have not been treated fairly in the past, not only in normal life, but also in the military. In the military, they were segregated, forced to do hard labor, and some even were not allowed weapons. Chad L. Williams explains in his book, Torchbearers of Democracy, African American Soldiers in the World War I Era, war planners deemed racial segregation, just as in civilian life, the most logical and efficient way of managing the presence of African Americans in the Army. In regular life, there's a lot of segregation, racism, and awful racial violence. Later, racist groups like the Ku Klux Klan were formed and Jim Crow laws were created. During the time of World War I, Harlem was made mostly of African Americans. However, there were a lot of different people and cultures, and they were welcome. But the people weren't happy with how things were. They just wanted to be treated as everyone else. On July 28, 1917, people held a silent march to protest the awful treatment of African Americans. While racial tensions were brewing at home, political tensions were brewing abroad. Militarism, alliances, imperialism, nationalism, and the assassination of Archduke Franz Ferdinand of Austria in 1914 led the world to war. The United States entered World War I in December 1917 because Germany was trying to get Mexico to form an alliance against the U.S., and that Germany was breaking their agreement to suspend unrestricted submarine warfare in the North Atlantic and Mediterranean. As the country prepared for war, soldiers were needed to fight. It took 18 years for the 369th Infantry to be created. Military law stated that young black men could not join the New York National Guard, including veterans from the Spanish-American War. Legislation had to be changed. In 1898, black civic leaders created a bill to amend the law. Despite having support from military and civilian organizations, the bill was not signed until June 1913. It took 3 more years before William Hayward was appointed to raise the regiment in June 1916. He started to recruit young soldiers from the San Juan Hill, the Williamsburg section of Brooklyn, and of course, Harlem. The soldiers were judged harshly, but unlike other white officers, Hayward respected his troops and did not discriminate. The 369th arrived in Brest, France in December 1918, but were not allowed to fight and were assigned manual labor. When the 369th was allowed to fight, the white American troops did not want to fight alongside African Americans, so the 369th was sent to fight with the French 93rd Division. General Pershing created a pamphlet called Secret Information Concerning the Black American Troops that was secretly given to the French. The pamphlet stated, although a citizen of the United States, the black man is regarded by the white American as an inferior being. This was ignored by the French soldiers. The 369th Division was the first African American unit to fight on French soil. The unit fought with the French in Chateau Thierry and Belleau Wood. They also participated in Champagne-Marne, Meuse-Argonne, and many other battles. Fighting was not easy. Major Warner Ross said stones, dirt, shrapnel, limbs, and whole trees filled the air. The noise and concussion alone were enough to kill you. Flashes of fire, the metallic crack of high explosives, the awful explosions that dug holes 15 and 20 feet in diameter, the utter and complete pandemonium, and the stench of hell. Your friends blown to bits, the pieces dropping near you. War is not something to be made light of. Even though faced with conflict, these men of bronze did not give up fighting. Perhaps one of the most famous stories of 369th Infantry is of Henry Johnson and Needham Roberts.
Now, approximately 24 Germans attacked. Needham Roberts got slugged almost immediately, and Johnson fought them off. He shot and he cut and he swung his life around and he defeated the 24 Germans. Those that didn't wound or kill, cut out. He had 21 wounds in his body, but he refused to die.
In his communique of May 20th, 1918, General Pershing remarked on Johnson and Needham's bravery by saying, Reports in hand show a notable instance of bravery and devotion shown by two soldiers of an American colored regiment operating in a French sector. They should be given credit for preventing, by their bravery, the capture of any of our men. The Harlem Hellfighters changed the opinion of General Pershing, who had once spoken derogatory things about them. These men showed true bravery and were the first Americans to be awarded the Croix de Guerre, the highest medal in the French military. The Harlem Hellfighters did not lose any land or prisoners to the Germans. Instead, they took land from the Germans. Melville Miller remembers walking through territory formerly owned by the Germans.
The sun was shining and we were marching and the band was playing. Everybody's head high. And we were all proud to be Americans, proud to be black, and proud to be the 15th New York Infantry.
The men in this division showed true courage and heroism in their fighting. Colonel William Hayward said, "Turn back? I should say not. My men never retire. They go forward or they die." James Reese Europe was a member of the Harlem Hellfighters. He was already a famous musician and composer. He started the 369th Infantry Jazz Band. Even though they were in dark times, the Harlem Hellfighters found light. They played a lot and brought jazz music to France. The Harlem Hellfighters are good at what they did, music and fighting. They were in the trenches for 191 days, longer than any other unit. It was the Germans that gave them the name Hellfighters for their viciousness and courage while fighting. The 369th also did many things for the first time in American history. They were the first African American unit to fight on French soil and the first unit to cross the Rhine River into Germany. They were the first and only unit to receive the Croix de Guerre for taking Citral and for their fighting in other battles. 171 members also received individual medals. The Harlem Hellfighters had a great impact on the people and society in their time. The Harlem Hellfighters made very good friends with the Frenchmen they fought with. The French ignored the pamphlet by General Pershing and were unprejudiced. Many made lifelong friendships. Arthur Little said, "The French people knew no color line." George Cuffey remembered the Harlem Hellfighters, became very good friends with the Frenchman Ruby Garnett. One day, Garnett took Cuffey's place on watch and was killed in an unexpected attack. If Garnett hadn't taken his watch, Cuffey felt that he would have died instead of Garnett. Cuffey later named his daughter Ruby Garnett after his friend. The Harlem Hellfighters were honored and welcomed when they returned home. They were thrown a parade to celebrate their accomplishments. Even though he was sitting in a car for the wounded, Henry Johnson was so moved he stood up waving the bouquet of flowers he was given. The Harlem Hellfighters used to recruit more African Americans and to sell war bonds. Slogans like "Henry Johnson licked 24 Germans. How many stamps have you licked?" were used. Meanwhile, the 369th Jazz Band wrote and recorded many songs. For a while, these men weren't judged as blacks. They were honored as heroes. But unfortunately, this did not last. While the infantry was given a parade, they were not allowed to be in the parade for the New York National Guard, also known as the Rainbow Division. The reason William Hayward was given was that black is not a color in the rainbow. There was still a lot of segregation. During the summer of 1919, there were so many riots that it was named the Red Summer. Things were still very bad, and even though they did so much, some of the Harlem Hellfighters died forgotten men without any military compensation or benefits. The Harlem Hellfighters are impacting us still today. The 369th Regiment, descended from the original from World War I, still survives. Because of the Harlem Hellfighters, France was introduced to jazz music, where it is still enjoyed, and there are concerts in France and the United States that honor the unit. The Harlem Hellfighters played a part in helping African Americans obtain rights by showing what they are capable of. They shined a light on racism, which is a major issue still today. The 369th Division had such a great impact that legislation was changed for members to receive the Medal of Honor posthumously. Senator Chuck Schumer used letters written from General Pershing about Henry Johnson to change legislation, letting Henry Johnson receive the Medal of Honor posthumously on June 2, 2015. There are statues and memorials for the Harlem Hellfighters, including one in the Champagne district of France. The Harlem Hellfighters proved that blacks can fight. The number of African Americans fighting for America has risen in past wars up to today. Because of the Harlem Hellfighters' example, now 47.7% of the military are African Americans and more minority groups are also in the military. We honor the Harlem Hellfighters for their heroic fighting. They are true heroes. The Harlem Hellfighters fought hard through racism and made a path for all African Americans. They showed us that no matter the color of your skin, everyone can be a hero.